Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Wilmot Township Council. This meeting is open to the public and is available through an online platform. Please subscribe to the Township of Wilmot YouTube channel to watch the live stream or view after the meeting. Delegations must register with the Information and Legislative Services Department. The only matters being discussed at this meeting will be those on the agenda. I need a motion to reconvene in open session at 7 o'clock. That's moved by Councillor Gordick, second by Councillor Fenning. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you for joining us for tonight's council meeting. Please take a moment to reflect as September 30th, Canada's first National Day for Truth and Reconciliation is approaching. This day is intended to provide an opportunity to recognize and commemorate the legacy of residential schools. May we take a moment of silence now to reflect. Thank you. For anyone looking for local activities on the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, there's plenty of things going on around the area in Guelph, Cambridge, the University of Waterloo, and our Wilmot staff. A variety of resources to read, watch, and listen have been provided. For more information, please visit the organizers' websites or the local newspapers, which will have the full details. Okay, ask that Councillor Gordick read the land acknowledgement, please.
We acknowledge with gratitude as we gather virtually that Wilmot Township is located on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Mississauga peoples. We also want to acknowledge that this Thursday is the first federal day to recognize the Canadian government designated September 30th National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, beginning in 2021. This responds to Truth and Reconciliation Call to Action 80, which states that the federal government will work with Indigenous people to establish a statutory day to honor survivors, their families, and communities, and ensure that public commemoration of the history and legacy of residential schools remains a vital component of the reconciliation process. We also want to acknowledge the importance of the Dish with One Spoon Covenant, a peace agreement made between Indigenous nations before the settlers arrived. It characterizes our collective responsibility to each other and Mother Earth. We should only take what we need, leave enough for others, and keep the dish clean. By acknowledging this covenant and the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, we are reminded of our important connection to this land where we live, learn, and work together as a community, and we continue down the path together in reconciliation.
Thank you. Are there any additions to the agenda? Seeing none. The adoption of the agenda, the recommendation that the agenda as presented for September 27th, 2021 be adopted. That is moved by Councillor Gordick, Councillor Fenning. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Seeing none. Minutes of the previous meetings. Recommendation that the minutes of the following meetings be adopted as presented. Regular council meeting September 13th, 2021. That is moved by Councillor Fisher, Councillor Gerber. Any comments, questions, omissions, corrections? Councillor Hallman.
Thank you. Through the mayor. We received correspondence from a couple of constituents based on the meeting, our last council meeting. And it was suggested by the clerk that one of the councillors could bring that forward to ask for those to be amended. So I'm just looking for the clerk to comment on if we can amend them as that, or should they be deferred until the concerned party has had an option to comment.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong. So no, in general, we don't reach out to members of the public to provide comment on the minutes. So I don't know that that's necessary. The member of the public did provide alternative wording for the minutes. Just for the benefit of the public who is listening, what was received. There was a couple of appendices that were delegation presentations, as well as their statements that they wrote out and read from. So those will certainly, those can be added to the minutes, no problem. The other was a wording change with regards to the to what was said by the residents expert that they brought in, and it was just a changing of the wording. I'm just bringing it up for myself here now, so that Alan Ramsey advised that he is of the opinion that the standards recommended by CSGW are appropriate, and many are only slightly above the standards in the ARA. So what I was saying is, if members of council want to bring forward that amendment, that is the option of council, not the residents to bring it forward, but for the option of council to bring it forward as a proposed amendment. If all of council is agreed, then we would revise the minutes as directed. Excuse me.
Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification, Ms. Middleholtz. So looking at the minutes that were presented and looking at the recommendation that was provided, I think that's a fair recommendation. So I would like to put that on the floor for an amendment.
Well, then you would say that yes, it would be the council would be voting on the minutes.
Council is in agreement that that be an amendment to the, yes. Okay, so we have a mover and a seconder.
Yes, we do.
Okay, so we're motion is for the on the minutes as amended. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Next item is a public meeting. This is a public meeting in respect of zone change application 07/21. We will hear all interested people who wish to speak on this matter. If the decision of council is appealed to the local planning appeal tribunal, the tribunal has the power to dismiss an appeal. If you do not speak at the public meeting or make written commission submissions before the bylaw is passed, I now declare the public meeting open. Persons attending as delegations at this meeting are required to leave their names and addresses, which will become part of the public record, and you are hereby advised that this information may be posted on the township's official website, along with your email address if provided. Mr. Martin?
Thank you, Mayor Armstrong.
Excuse me, Angie, do you have a question or? Okay, very good.
All right, thank you. So the application to which this public meeting is subject would be a zone change application and subdivision. The lands to which these applications apply are on the west side of Baden, north of Snyder's Road. The purpose of this meeting is to hear comments that individuals may have with respect to this proposed development. No decisions are or recommendations are being made at this meeting. The Subject property was brought into the Baden urban area as part of the township's rationalization of boundaries process that finished up in April of 2019. So these lands were brought in with the intent to be developed for residential purposes. The applications before us are both a subdivision application that proposes a range of dwelling units from 269 to 325 units in the form of single detached and townhome dwellings. The proposed draft plan also includes a future school block as requested by the Waterloo Catholic District School Board, stormwater management areas, and an integrated trail network that would connect with both existing sidewalks and provide new recreational opportunities. The zone change application that would ultimately implement the subdivision proposes zoning that would accommodate a mix of housing forms throughout the development. However, the blocks that adjoin existing residential neighborhoods are proposed to remain for single detached dwellings, whereas the rest of the development would provide a range of singles and townhomes potentially. The actual lotting has not been provided at this point. The blocks show, as shown in the draft plan, show a range of unit numbers that could be accommodated. And certainly through this process, staff would anticipate more details provided before any recommendations are brought before council. The other pieces of the zoning amendment would deal with implementing the school site, but also providing the ability, should the Catholic School Board not obtain funding for a new school, that land could also be developed for residential purposes. So the zoning would accommodate both those potentials for this site. There were a number of comments that were received through circulation of the application. Those comments are attached, and certainly the detailed technical studies that accompanied these applications are still under review. And again, staff would take any comments received through this public meeting, as well as written comments that have been provided to date, and along with the completion of technical reviews, and that information would then subsequently be provided back to council in a more detailed report with recommendations at a future date.
Okay, thank you. Does council have any questions of a technical nature? Okay, seeing none. Before commencing with hearing from delegations, I would like to remind all delegations of some guidelines for participation. Delegations will be allotted 5 minutes to speak, and a timer will be shown on screen. We also ask that you leave the meeting once your issue has been addressed. You are then welcome to watch the remainder of the meeting being webcast live via YouTube. If you conduct yourself in any of the following manners, it will result in an immediate muting and removal from the meeting. Interrupting councillors, staff, or other delegations, derogatory statements about councillor, staff, or others, hate speech, or defamatory comments. I will now call upon the delegations. The first delegation is Pierre Chevion. Welcome, Pierre.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. My name is Pierre Chauvin. I'm a partner at MHBC Planning here on behalf of the applicant. I do have a PowerPoint presentation. If I can just share my screen, I can do that and go through my slide deck that way if you prefer. Or there you go, you've got it. I'll just let you know to advance the slide. So as I said, I'm here on behalf of the applicant, which is Snyder's Road, Baden, GP, Inc. Next slide, please. As identified on this slide, the red area represents the lands that are subject to the applications this evening. Our client also owns additional lands, I'll call it to the north of these subject lands that extend all the way up to the Foxborough subdivision and golf course. Those aren't subject to this particular application. They're outside of the current settlement area boundary. However, most other lands are within what is called the countryside line as identified by the regional regional official plan. Next slide, please. So just as most people know where we are in the world, but just as a bit of a context, we are immediately west of the existing settlement area of Baden. Baden's public school is immediately, east to us, and to the west we have the Sir Adam Beck Public School, as well as Waterloo Oxford District Secondary School, all within walking distance, as is the settlement area of Baden. We are also in close proximity to the Wilmot Recreational Complex, as well as a number of trails, existing and proposed trails, which I'll speak to in a moment. But these lands, in our view, are, as Andrew indicated, they're within the settlement area and are an appropriate location for the expansion of the Baden settlement area. Next slide, please. We've prepared an urban design brief as part of our submission, and I believe that's also online on your public website. This is just we prepared a design vision or direction for the subdivision. Early on in the pre-consultation process, we heard from the Catholic School Board that they were interested, and there's a strong desire to have a school site in the subdivision, which we have provided for, and that we feel will provide as a great community focal point, which will connect to the broader community, which we're going to encourage active transportation, et cetera, as well as providing a nice broad range and mix of units and housing types, as Andrew alluded to earlier. Next slide, please. This is just an illustration of the proposed subdivision, a concept, and I'll speak to the various design elements as we go through. But as you'll see, it provides a broad, nice network of street pattern, essentially a grid or modified grid pattern, connecting to existing road stubs in the existing Baden settlement area at Betchin Lane and Wagler Avenue, as well as providing future connections either to the north and west, as well as to the, I'll call it to the northeast, to future lands that are maybe subject to future applications in the very near future. There's also a main entrance and access out to Snyder's Road, which would form essentially the main entrance to the subdivision. I do note there's 245 to 296 residential units. The discrepancy between what Andrew had said earlier that relates to perhaps future development blocks or the school block that I've not included in that number. The school block that represents that large green area in the center of the plan. We've provided for a stormwater management facility, which is the darker green area on the left side of that image, and closest to the nearest agricultural barn. So it will act as a buffer to the future residential units, to the existing agricultural use to the west. There is a number of multi-use trails proposed, and I'll speak to those in a moment. But effectively, with this plan, we meet the required density requirements by the province and the region. Next slide, please. So as Andrew noted, we did work with the township early on. They identified the need to have a trail connection in and around the subdivision. So in purple lines, you'll see on this plan, we've identified connecting to the existing trail along Snyder's Road and going through the stormwater management pond and then connecting around the subdivision. You'll note that we have also a trail that interfaces with the existing subdivision, which not only acts as a recreational network, but also as an opportunity to provide additional buffer between the existing homes and the future dwellings there. So all told, between the property line and the road,
30 seconds.
There's about 36 meters there. Next slide. I'll just race through these next slides. So again, I spoke to the interconnections that we're providing. So a lot of the blue ones represent the existing and pending connections, and the light blue ones identify future connections. The school block centered to the subdivision, walkable to majority of the community. Next slide, please. Again, this is summarizing some of the public realm aspects and key gateways that we will try to emphasize design aspects in the actual either the landscaping, the public realm, or even the design of the units themselves to emphasize these particular areas. Next slide. This is just an image of the plan of subdivision, as Andrew indicated, it is a lotless block subdivision, but the lotting will be established prior to registration or subsequent through part lot control. We have identified single detached lots, again, interfacing with the existing residential area.
You have to wrap up here, please.
Sure. I won't dwell on this, but essentially we've mirrored the zoning that's in on the interface lands to the existing subdivision. Next slide. And again, I just want to emphasize on this that the lands will be serviced by existing services. We are also integrating this with an ongoing class environmental assessment that will not only look at the sanitary servicing of these lands, but a broader area. So we'll have a public benefit to not only these lands, but everyone beyond, and to service future lands in the township. So you'll see another public meeting associated with that in the near future. Next slide, and I think that, or I'll just skip over this slide. I'll just say that we have traffic improvements recommended, which require a left turn lane. But in summary, we believe this is this plan represents and meets all the provincial and regional policy framework. There is a critical need for land in Wilmot Township, and this will satisfy that need for residential land, and will and in turn achieve and help achieve a more attainable housing in your community. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that council may have, and if there are any further questions that come out of the delegations, I'd be happy to return and answer those. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Gordick.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you to Mr. Chauvin. I noticed that it's quite a large area. Is there, because of the fact that there's, I'm assuming potentially for families, some of the communities I've been seeing lately in other parts of the region and other areas are incorporating a public park within that. I don't see any area for if there is families, so that perhaps they stay within the community and get a sense of community within that community besides the school block. Is there any part of that in your development plan?
Thank you for the question, through you, Mr. Mayor. As you noted, certainly the school block will act as a community benefit, or that during sort of off hours, I'll say, that can be used by the public. There is a series of public trails. It was identified early on by the township staff that as opposed to a small parkette, they preferred having and building on their existing trail network, and so they prefer having the trail. So that's why we've identified trails throughout the plan as we have.
Thank you. Councillor Fisher.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong. Yeah, I had the same thought too. I know that's really good with a pretty extensive trail network through there, but I really felt like there was a lack of park space or green space. And I really would like to see a little more of that if possible. And I do like the single family homes to the other homes. That's I've had a number of calls, being I'm the Baden counselor, and those calls were specifically, am I going to have townhomes backing onto me? So I'm happy for that. And lastly, do you have any type of time frame when this might be coming back to us?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so again, on the park, we're happy to revisit that with township staff. And we've heard your comments, and I'm sure you've heard the comments from your constituents. So we're happy to revisit that with planning staff and your Parks and Rec staff to see what we can do provide some park space. With respect to the yes, I agree. We've modified or ensured that the lotting along the interface lands are going to be singles. There is provision in the bylaw for a mix of towns beyond those areas that are interface with the existing subdivision. So that we can meet the density targets that are established by the province and the region. With respect to timing, it's really contingent on the completion of the sanitary servicing as the EA is underway, as I noted, and we hope that that'll get wrapped up in concert with this plan of subdivision, and we're hoping that the plan of subdivision can be approved, if not early in the new year or early in the first quarter or early second quarter of next year. So that's our hope. But again, as I said, the actual construction of the subdivision will be dependent on the servicing solution that's contemplated through the Class EA.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hallman.
Thank you for calling on me, Mayor. I just see that the Development Service Director had his hand up, and I'm not sure if it's in concert with what Councillor Fisher was asking, so I'm just going to ask. No, okay. Oh yes, sorry. Then I'll wait for the director if that's all right with you, Mayor. Just in case it.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Krapka.
Thank you, Mayor Armstrong. Through you, just to provide a bit of context, the preliminary comments that are provided to the developer based on existing documentation, in particular with respect to parks, the Parks Master Plan, which Council approved, I forget what year, 2018, something like that, 2017 maybe. But basically within that document, that is sort of where we structure the parks layout with the Director of Recreation, and certainly listening to public input, that certainly is a conversation that still will be expanded upon prior to coming back to Council with a recommendation. But I do want to point out that the standard within that document says that a public park should be located not closer than 800 meters to another public park. With the existing park at Goldschmidt at the top end, the radiuses that are calculated were such that this development would not necessarily need to have a park within it based on the approved Parks and Rec Master Plan, but it is something that can be revisited and discussed. But that is the rationale why the initial draft of this concept that's come to you for comment and discussion does not show a park, is that from a staff perspective, it was in conformity with the approved Parks and Rec Master Plan.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Hallman.
Thank you, through the Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. I just wanted to thank you for your comments on the intensification, as I fully support the region's plan and the township's support of that. We have so many people looking for homes in our community, and intensification means access for that. And mom of three, I want my babies to stay close to home, and having more homes and access to that is what our community needs. So thank you for that, and enjoyed seeing the trail plan, and thankful that Mr. Krafka could answer my question with that proximity to that park. So then I guess my question would be actually to Ms. Jackson in her role as Director of Parks, and maybe Mr. Krafka in combination here. So with that, would there be opportunity with a more amount of children who would probably be using that park at Goldschmidt to add pieces in the future, or what does that look like for our community if there's not parkland put in the new development?
Ms. Jackson.
Thank you, Mayor. Are you asking within the context of this particular plan of subdivision, Councillor, or are you talking about areas surrounding it?
Confirmation, Mayor, through you. Thank you. I'm wondering if we're going with the trail system network as the allocation, which I think is amazing, that looking at also these young families who potentially will be in this community, if there's opportunity to enhance the existing park in that and Goldschmidt, so that we can have the maximum benefit of a great trail system, which I think is needed, but then also accommodate perhaps more swings or things like that that families will be drawn to. I hope that clarifies.
Yes, thank you. Through the mayor, we can certainly look at Goldschmidt and what amenities we have there and see whether or not there's something that we can do within the capital budget to improve that parkland. Typically, if there's a school development occurring within that area, they will also have some sort of playground activities there or equipment there. So we can certainly work in concert with what we learn from the school board if that moves forward as well.
A follow-up, Councillor Holm?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Follow-up question. It's my understanding that was a secondary school or a primary school that is being looked at, allocated for that land. Could someone clarify that for me?
I can
Go ahead,
clarify that,
go ahead,
Mr.
Pierre.
Mayor. Yes, it's a Catholic elementary school.
Okay, thank you. That clarifies that question for me.
I see no further questions, so thank you, Pierre.
Thank you, Mayor. And like I said, I'd be happy to come back if there are any specific questions arising from the public comments.
Okay, thank you. Our next speaker is Penny Collins. Welcome, Penny. Welcome, Penny. You have 5 minutes.
All right, thank you. Mayor Armstrong and councillors, my name is Penny Collins. My husband and I have lived in Baden for 16 years, and in those 16 years, I've managed to put down some deep roots in this community. I volunteer at Baden Public School. I coach girls baseball, soccer. I'm a trainer for hockey. I'm a big part of the Baden Optimist Club for over 8 years. I'm a big part of the Baden Parade, organize information nights and community get-togethers and events for kids. So through these events, I have seen this community come together and enjoy what's being offered. And I think if you give them a chance to gather, they will. So this is going to touch on the parks and green space aspect, which is great because you guys were just talking about that. So I think we all can agree that green space is important. So after reading the overview of the township's official plan, an appropriate supply of safe public accessibility, open spaces, parks, trails, and other recreational facilities, it got me thinking about, well, what's the appropriate park? Because I look at this subdivision and it's a pretty decent sized subdivision. There's going to be a lot of homes in there and a lot of families, young families, like what our subdivision was. So I appreciate growth because I know I took advantage of it 16 years ago. So I'm all for it. So what a couple of the concerns with the public park situation is the design and vision and direction. So they were saying that the elementary school, the Catholic one, will be the community focal point of this subdivision, which is awesome because most schools are, and it's great to have. But the outdoor space that they're incorporating in all this is actually private property, and people are asked to leave during school hours because it's not safe for the kids to be there, for the students. I mean, because you don't know who's a stranger, who's not, all that type of stuff, stranger danger. And so, but also looking at the WCDSB, they do not rent out the area for general use. If the general public uses the areas after school hours, they do so at their own risk. So it's not an actual true public space that you could go to. So I think that's a concern that I have there. My other concern is that if this is going to be the focal point, But if the school backs out and we end up putting in more housing there, then that takes away everything too, the whole look of the whole subdivision area. So I was a little concerned with kind of that whole thing with public space, but then it's gone. Now it's not the focal point, that type of thing. And then I kind of got further on looking at green space or open space. And when I looked at the map, and he showed a great picture of that. So there's lots of streets, lots of trees. The retention pond, or the water retention pond, is a focal point for open space, but it's actually not really a safe place for kids to be going, especially with the spring, the high waters, that type of thing. So we should be promoting it as trails, but not an actual open space where kids can go to play. So that was kind of something that I was kind of touching on as well. Planned green spaces, I think, is a significant social space for people to interact on a daily basis. I see it at the castle. I see kids putting up badminton nets. I see kids practicing with their parents baseball and things like that. So I think it's a good indicator of maintaining a well-being residential community, if that makes sense. We are a small town community, and we want to keep that small town community. So I think that when you're looking at people want to come in and that, and you're trying to get a lot of people in there, I think you get focused on maybe more of the iconic value of a subdivision versus the actual living environment, the living experience that we want people to have. You want people to come home and go, yeah, this is my home. I'm so glad I'm here. This is where I want to be for the rest of my life, growing up, or the kids' lives, and that. So, and then COVID really reinforced open space. You know, you got confined in your homes, you needed to get out. Trails were great, but just to have a picnic or just get out there and again, throw the ball and things like that. So I'm kind of challenging Wilmot to see if we can find a way with welcoming growth and having housing, but also having a bit more of a permanent, safe, sustainable public green space that we can use in this plan. You know, it's great, like I said, when you come home and you see kids in the park and playing and things like that, it unites us, and also it gives an opportunity for people to go and have family gatherings that are too big for your backyard and things like that. So yeah, so I'm on board with what you guys are talking about, green space. I understand that there's certain distances between things, but I'm hoping that I'm challenging you guys to see if we can find something that we can do with this development, and then we can all go back and forth to different parks and all our new subdivisions. So thank you very much for listening to what I have to say.
Thank you, Penny. You have a question for the delegation, Councillor Hallman?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. Penny, thank you for your delegation. Your experience with sharing with the school not being accessible during the day, that was a real aha moment for me. So thank you for providing that, because you are absolutely correct that when you have littles who aren't in school yet, you can't participate in playing in that green space on the school property. So that is a very valuable piece of input. And I'm hoping that I can see Mr. Kafka is already making notes. So thank you for bringing that to light, and I really appreciated that. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Penny.
Okay, awesome.
Alrighty.
Thank you very much.
The next delegation is Stephanie Gertz. Welcome, Stephanie.
Hello, everyone.
Go ahead. You have your 5 minutes.
Thank you, through your chair. So I'm just confirming you guys can hear me. Yeah, okay, good. So between May and June of this year, all 7 municipalities in the region of Waterloo, actually, sorry, let me pause. I'm here tonight representing the Nith Valley Eco Boosters, as well as 50 by 30 Waterloo region. So between May and June of this year, all 7 municipalities in the region of Waterloo endorsed the Transform Waterloo Region strategy created by Climate Action Waterloo Region, while also passing the additional interim absolute community GHG emissions reduction target at 50% by 2030, proposed by 50 by 30. The Transform Waterloo Region strategy clearly outlines how our municipalities can reach their climate goals. I've read this report many times, and after reviewing this new subdivision plan, both Nith Valley Eco Boosters and 50 by 30 feel that the subdivision plan does not align with the commitments Wilmot made 4 months ago. In 2020, Waterloo Region was listed as the fastest growing community in Canada. We are expected to grow over 900,000 people by 2051. This makes emissions reductions even more challenging as we need to decrease our overall emissions, not just our emissions per person. We need to design with a low carbon future in mind. We need to align our intentions and actions by not only creating a framework that decisions should be evaluated against, but actually using this framework and proactively doing things better. One of the first concerns that we've had, which other people have highlighted, is the lack of green space. As well, it doesn't seem to create a walkable community, which is what we need to be prioritizing. There is momentum for environmental stewardship, and it's linked to whole community wellness, physical, mental, and emotional. We need to ensure green spaces are available to all members of our community in a fair and equitable way. Green spaces, as well as walkable communities, promote strong relationships, accessibility, and diversity. We need to build complete neighborhoods with assortment of businesses and services to meet people's needs. They need to be where people can walk, bike, or roll to within a 15-minute time period. This subdivision looks to be the first of many in that area, but all the plans for all these subdivisions need to take this into consideration. There are already problems in trying to create walkable communities in Baden, such as the lack of healthcare facilities, as well as a local grocer. The Transform Waterloo Region report states that in 2015, nearly half of our community's GHG emissions came from how we move people and goods. Furthermore, short distance trips of less than 5 kilometers make up 50% of our travel by residents in the region. It is projected that by 2050, we should have 80% of our trips that are under 5K should be walking, cycling, or rolling. Currently, this is not how it's going to work with our Baden community. We need to plan these subdivisions with this in mind. Building codes. The federal government recently announced that they intend to move from an energy-based building code to a net zero emissions building code by 2025. Knowing this, we should be planning all of our subdivisions by this standard. The Canadian Home Builders Association stated net zero homes produce as much clean energy as they consume. They're up to 80% more energy efficient than typical new homes and use renewable energy systems to produce the remaining energy they need. 45% of our local GHG emissions in 2015 came from energy used in buildings. Most of this is from natural gas and other fossil fuels. Switching off fossil fuels for heating and cooling is one of the most impactful changes that we can make. Most municipalities in Canada, some of them are in Waterloo, are already ahead of Wilmot in their development. A new net zero subdivision is underway in Westport, Ontario, where Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing Steve Clerk visited and stated its future of development for small communities. Sifton Properties in London has created a 2,000 residential units, including townhouses, low-rise and high-rise with ground floor commercial space. And Oxford County has already done several initiatives and projects. They're trying to prove the concept so that others can follow. They're currently doing a 33-unit affordable housing project in Woodstock. Powers of the municipality. Municipalities do have authority provided by the Planning Act and Municipal Act to expect low carbon net zero development. The Planning Act provides municipalities with the authority to mandate sustainable urban design through site plan approvals. However, only a few innovative municipalities are using this authority. Political leadership on municipal council is needed to establish local ambition on climate and energy and to build key relationships with industry innovators, public institutions, and the broader community. Both Nith Valley Eco Boosters and 50 by 30 are open to working with staff and council to ensure that a new progressive subdivision is created that aligns with the climate and social justice goals already agreed upon by the township. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Councillor Fanning, you have a question of the delegation?
I do, thank you. Hi, Stephanie, through you, Mayor Armstrong. Just when you're talking about walkability, and there is that trail, kind of a perimeter trail, it looks like from the preliminary plan, what pieces of walkability would you specifically would you add to this to improve that?
Yeah, so I think from what I've heard from a number of people in our community and organizations and businesses, there's a lack of healthcare facilities within Baden for physicians, family doctors and such. There's no place that you can walk to go see your family doctor. Same with grocery. There's no real grocery store in there. So when we're looking for the future and we're looking for the development of creating these facilities, these areas, I know people have looked at what infrastructure is already available in Baden that they could retrofit to make into a healthcare facility or put a grocery store in. And there's nothing really available that they've seen plausible. Therefore, when we're building new subdivisions and we're looking at how can we create commercial spaces maybe on the main floor, so how can we look at some of the problems and issues that are currently existing in Baden that people can't walk to because it doesn't exist? Could we use some of the space that's going to be developed in this new area to build those infrastructures and those needs in there?
Thank you.
I may.
Yeah, follow.
Actually, to the Director of Development Services or Mr. Chauvin, if you would like to comment on whether that's something that's feasible or, you know, any comments that you might have.
Go ahead, Mr. Krapka.
Through Mayor Armstrong, well, certainly staff and the township historically would always support, do what we could to create a facility that would have doctors. Certainly there's been proposals over the years. Mayor Armstrong will remember from previous councils, you know, as well. Grocery stores, I don't know that we've ever had a proposal for a grocery store, but certainly we've made every effort to support opportunities to buy local food. The Baden Emporium for a lot of years tried to run a market. The reality was that the residents themselves of Baden didn't support it to make it sustainable. Certainly there's an attempt right now, the last couple of summers, with the Wilmot Summer Market. Again, a great initiative, a great opportunity, but it only survives if the public embraces it. So, well, certainly we support the idea that it would be great to have those facilities in Baden. There's the reality that, you know, a grocery store has to have a certain public size of consumers to make it viable. And so to a certain extent, it's a bit of a chicken and egg, as you need the population to justify creating the enterprise in order that that the store would survive, right? So historically, that's always been the issue. The benefit in Baden is obviously, and this council obviously has supported it very much, is the expansion of Route 77 and providing options within Baden that you can get to a grocery store in New Hamburg. Is it a bit further? Yes, it is, but to a certain extent, it's also a destination choice. You know, certainly all along that corridor, whether you live in Petersburg, it in theory be even less walkable and further from grocery stores. You'd have to use Route 77 to live in Petersburg as well without a vehicle, but it is an opportunity in Wilmot that quite frankly 10 years ago didn't exist because we didn't have access to public transit. So to a certain extent, the population growth helps build those infrastructure pieces that then give us the opportunity to attract doctors to Baden, to attract dentists to Baden. Certainly dentists in Baden we used to have none, now we have a few. And those kind of things keep progressing with the population growth. So certainly respect the comments, understand them completely. Certainly our designs within Baden itself, it's a very walkable community. There's been a lot of infrastructure dollars spent by the region and by the township to make, you know, walking even to the high school, which 20 years ago was a huge issue, kids walking down the road to get to the high school. Now there's a sidewalk. It does make it more walkable. It is more accessible. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. And, you know, from that perspective, I would just say that every attempt is being made, and certainly we're hearing your comments and looking for ways to incorporate that.
Thanks, Harold. Councillor Hallman, you have a comment or question?
Thanks for the mayor to the Director of Development Services. Can you clarify with economic development in mind, what has been the engagement surrounding Baden so far with your department?
Through Mayor Armstrong, could you add like a bit more detail to that question? Because it kind of didn't have us. Well, I'm not sure what the subject matter is with respect to doctors or with respect to healthcare. Or?
Just with commercial requests for commercial building. and that kind of thing? What
Sure,
has the outreach with economic development with Baden? You know, healthcare or businesses in general? How many times do you guys kind of get reached out for that kind of inquiry?
Through you, Mayor Armstrong, Council, not a lot in Baden, quite frankly. From time to time in the corridor down near the highway where there would be some commercial potential. Most of the main street of Baden is identified as commercial zoning and would allow those uses. We have had proposals. Certainly we have in our official plan identified the Baden Urban Growth Center, which is in what I would call the Mill District, where we're hoping to see redevelopment occur. That's a mix of uses of residential, workplaces, and housing. As you may recall, in 2009, we pushed hard to Metrolinx. And at that time seemed like we were on a path to getting a GO station and the overnight facility, which would have dramatically, increased that draw of public transit, provide access to and from the community. The government moved away from that plan, and now in recent weeks, as you're aware, has moved back towards that plan by extending it as far as London. So certainly that is something that moving forward, the township is looking at trying to get access to that. Again, those kinds of infrastructure investments were we to get a station for GO to get people in and out of the city and back, makes an attractive destination as a place to live, but also the ability to live in the community, perhaps work in a different community, but using public transit rather than the automobile is the focus. So I don't know if that answers, but definitely there's inquiries from time to time. We try to be supportive of them, but recognizing that the number one factor in any business location decision typically is how many people are going to come by my door. And in Baden, 20 years ago it was about 1,300 people. Now it's about 5,000 people. So certainly it's more attractive. And I think that's why we've seen, the dentist's office pop up, physiotherapy, healthcare, those kind of things. And I don't know what that critical mass is for a doctor, but the location of the doctor's office is recently at the boardwalk, which is accessible by Route 77 to a certain extent, does provide that access to doctors. Do you have to sit on a bus? Yes, but it does give you access that you wouldn't have had even 10 years ago. And certainly New Hamburg as well, with the clinic in New Hamburg. Is there space available for new clients? Probably not. My understanding is that it's been quite a while. I'm lucky in that I've lived here long enough that I do have my family doctor and I can walk to it. But again, there's inquiries, but we don't control the actual end result of the doctor deciding to put an office in Baden. If one wanted to, we would wholeheartedly support it and find ways to support that however we could. But again, it's that balancing point of the person spending the money to create the grocery store or spending the money to create the clinic wants to do it in a location where they're going to be successful. That's the sad reality of our society, is that the end result is to make money. And if the grocery store is not going to make money, they probably won't come. It's the same with vendors at the summer market. If there's not enough clients to justify packing up their product and bringing it to the market to sell it, then they're not going to come back the next season. So.
Thanks, Harold. Yeah, I'll confirm that over the last several years, I've had inquiries from doctors about putting in a clinic here in Baden, medical doctors, and they've just not come to fruition. And it's unfortunate. And my family doctor at the clinic in New Hamburg is moving to the boardwalk next month. Ms. Middleholz?
Thank you, through you, Mayor Armstrong. Councillor Hallman, your question originally was also directed towards Mr. Chauvin. Would you like me to bring him back into the conversation to respond to that? Mayor or Councillor Hallman? Somebody?
Thank you. Sorry. I had to find the button. Thank you through the mayor to the clerk. I'm satisfied with that answer at this point in this conversation, so that's okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Gordick.
Thank you through you, Mayor. Probably to Mr. O'Crafter because Mr. Chauvin is not there, but or even to Mr. Martin. Just some of the points that Ms. Gertz brought up with regards to our commitment to the 50 by 30 and some of our other sustainable Waterloo commitments, and her big point about the fact that getting around within the community. And I know it's just at the beginning stages and drawing stages, but with our commitment to doing that, and I'm not sure, I'm not discounting the research that Ms. Gertz has done, but with regards to some of the stronger things that we as a municipality can be doing going forward. So for example, as I've talked to Mr. Okrafka about with the net zero subdivision being offered in Kitchener, is that something that we would be working with Mr. Chauvin? And so that's one question. The other is, it's still bothering me, the look of the subdivision. I get that we have a parks master plan with regards to 800 meters away, and perhaps with Ms. Jackson saying that we could incorporate maybe new park equipment into the other subdivision. The idea being that the school boards wouldn't let the children close by. Wallacestown, I believe, is the name of the subdivision that's in Kitchener-Waterloo. That's, is it Wallacestown, I think? I look at that and I remember reading an article about it when it was first being brought forward, and thinking, is that something that we should be working towards? Because there's a lot of green space, there's a community hub, there's getting that thing together. And I understand that developers, part of it is a profit-making thing, totally get that. But is this something that maybe perhaps going forward, we relook at our parks master plans and things like that to sort of make it both, get more intensification, but I think that we should be looking at incorporating greener spaces so that people can get out. As we've found out from COVID, being locked in your house for a long period of time is not fun. And while I appreciate Miss Fenning and her trails, I'm not a trail person, so I wouldn't go near the trails. And I'd much rather go sit in a park bench or something like that, or sit in the grass. And I get that trails are a great thing, love them. I'm not going to them. So there might be other people just like me that's not something that they're interested in. So those are some of the comments I'd like to sort of see if we can look at.
Mr. Krafka.
Thank you, Mayor Armstrong. So that was a lot. I think I remember. So we'll start with things like net zero, which certainly the township would support any developer who wants to introduce net zero into the building. At this time, there's a balance in that, you know, you need a welcome developer. I think we're fortunate in Wilmot that this development and other developers, Activa being one, who introduced the net zero community, or net zero ready, I think it's called, along Trussell Road, are, you know, we're expecting to see plans from Activa in the coming months. So I think we're starting from a good spot in that we have good developers who are receptive to ideas and concepts, and without promising that that's what this could be, it's certainly a good discussion point to have. And so I would just mention that, Councillor Gorgic, that the net zero discussion that we had regarding the Activa development along Trussell Road, net zero ready, is a developer that will be developing at some point in Baden. And so I think that's a great starting point. And certainly from a staff perspective, as you are aware, we're very supportive of finding ways to do things better. The parkland discussion, I did raise Goldschmidt Park and the 800 meters, and that's certainly a consideration. The existing Activa development also has township-owned parkland beside the school site, and also obviously the large green space around Castle Kilbride. So the area does have a lot of existing, what I would call square block park. Some trail up the center trail corridor, but not, you know, perimeter trails or trails where you could walk or run, as I might like to do for a couple of kilometers or 5. So certainly Ms. Jackson and Mr. Martin and myself have had discussions on what parkland should look like, could look like. We're hearing the public input, we're hearing council's input, and it's definitely something that before we have a recommendation, we would come back with ideas and concepts. There are other ways to add parkland, perhaps, you know, there's other areas that may make sense without getting into too much detail. There is that balance point between trying to build tighter density and higher density on land that's designated for residential. And as Mr. Martin indicated, that, you know, really the designation that we're dealing with tonight, we've already increased the density because this designation came from the rationalization exercise, which pulled pieces of land out of unserviced settlements around the township that were designated to be built on wells and septics, and brought it into Baden to allow us to do fully serviced development. You wouldn't see a townhome development on septic systems in St. Agatha, for example, or Petersburg, that requires the full services. So we're already ahead of the game in that we've taken our rural privately serviced lands and brought them into Baden to allow for a fully serviced subdivision. Within that, there's that balance of wanting to provide, perfectly designed subdivisions where everybody's happy. And again, density is a big part of that. I feel like I'm talking a lot, but for those of you who recall Baden prior to the Activa subdivision behind Castle Kilbride, one of the discussions when we dealt with the Activa subdivision was that the density was too great, that it was going to overwhelm the community, that there was too many people there. And the reality being that density today doesn't meet the current standards that we're trying to achieve with this development. So every development seems a little more dense, but the goal is to still, with that density, provide that green space. And so it is a balancing act. Certainly our job as staff and recreation staff will be to come back with a recommendation that listens to the public input. We're asking for public input for a reason, so that we can respond to it and incorporate that into the designs, and certainly council's input. And then ultimately council will have to decide if you're happy with the plan that comes back, or whether you want changes. And that's your prerogative to make those changes as you see fit.
Thank you. Councillor Fanning? Sorry, Councillor Gardick, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, I do. Sorry. I know I asked a lot of things there to Mr. Okrafka, but have you also looked at the Wallacestown community, Mr. Okrafka, to sort of see have you heard of it, to sort of see what I was talking about with regards to green space and walkability? And does that go against the intensification things that we're working towards, just to sort of get that sense of community and kind of incorporating maybe perhaps some of the retail spaces or boardwalks, doctor spaces that Ms. Gertz had mentioned in her presentation?
I'm not familiar with Wallacestown. I will be happy to look it up, and we can incorporate that into our review and consideration of opportunities that may present themselves here. Yeah, any input like that is certainly something that we will follow up on and give consideration to.
And then just to, again, through that follow-up with regards to perhaps the relooking at the parks master plan, is that something, I know that's not within your remit, but that would be Ms. Jackson, because of all the changes with regards to green space and 50/30, is that something that would be on the agenda going forward, instead of waiting the usual sort of 5 to 6 years to redo some of these reports?
Well, I'll let Ms. Jackson answer that through you, Mayor Armstrong. She can answer the question on the timing of looking at that or the impacts, but from a planning perspective, that's the balancing act that's tricky with 50/30 is we want both increased density and then we want green space. Well, if you're taking green space, using up land for green space and density, then you're increasing your use of agricultural land, which then kicks into the other concern is to minimize the use of agricultural lands. So there is a balancing act there, and finding that happy medium that works. We have to recognize that we have requirements within the regional plan that we have to adhere to for minimum densities. It doesn't mean we can't do higher densities, but there is that balance between being a rural community, acknowledging that we don't have an LRT running between New Hamburg and Baden. We have Route 66, which is 2 or 3 short buses with a good schedule, but I think we all would agree that we could always use more buses when we want them, which would be great. But so there's that balancing. But as to the Parks Master Plan, that's the approved document of council that we have to work with right now. I think it is appropriate that we can look at what that implication is, but the timing should be consistent, quite frankly, to approve a document and then continually change it based on, applications. Doesn't really, it's definitely possible. It's just, it creates a bit of a quandary in trying to, provide consistent basis to developers and then constantly be changing the rules of the game. There's value in consistency.
Yeah. And to be fair, Mr. Kraft, I was more referring to the fact that we committed to the 50 by 30, not necessarily to each development. So that was sort of where my thought was going to, is moving forward as we've done that. Should we be looking back and looking at some of our goals from a few years ago when we've committed to the 50 by 30 and not sort of incorporated them. So I appreciate the comments though. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Jackson, did you want to comment?
Thank you, Mayor. Just to follow up with Mr. Okrafka's comments, I think, first of all, I'm always very happy to hear that discussions are about parkland. So that makes my heart sing. And of course, about trails and recreation opportunities. I think what I would like to add to what Mr. Okrafka said earlier is that when we take a look at a community, we try not to look at subdivision by subdivision. We want to look at the larger picture of the community. And if we have walkable spaces or parkland within 800 meters, that does meet the criteria. That is a standard criteria in most parks master plans that I've been involved in. Can always improve that, obviously. But I think, and with respect to schools, I just wanted to comment that generally they're not really taken into consideration with respect to meeting the 800-meter criteria. They're a bonus. And I do respect Ms. Gert's comment about access is not always a possibility, and there is a bit of a personal risk using public properties like the schools. But I think generally we'll look at Baden as a community, not just each subdivision independently, and ensure that we're taking a high level view of what the best way to move the people through that community and provide recreation opportunities. And I'm always going to be the one who's pushing for more parkland. So I really appreciate all the comments this evening, and we'll take them back with the Director of Development Services and the Manager of Planning. Thank you.
Councillor Fenning.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. First of all, to Councillor Gordyke, we don't have to have either the trails or parks. We can have both, and trails are very important for people's mental health as well as physical health. You should come for a walk with me. I'm going to say it was really great to hear from Ms. Gertz, but our protocol is that I believe we haven't been asking her any questions. So I would like to actually ask if Mr. Chauvin is willing to come back and comment to the question about the net zero ready, if that's something that he is comfortable commenting on as far as with this subdivision, if that is something that they would consider. And again, obviously it's perhaps putting him on the spot a little bit, but if that's something he's comfortable commenting on, I would appreciate hearing his comments on some of the other questions and that one in particular.
Welcome back, Pierre. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and it's been interesting to listen to the conversation and a lot of great comments, and thank you, Ms. Gertz, for your comments, and we certainly acknowledge your perspective. I certainly don't disagree with a lot of what has been said by Mr. Okrafka and others. We, as I said earlier, we're open and willing to continue to work with staff to if there's a need for a park, finding a place that's either in conjunction with the school site or other appropriate location, certainly willing to work with staff on that front. With respect to the net zero ready, we, again, as Mr. Okrafka noted, there are other developers who are certainly active in that sort of space, and we'll definitely take that back to our client. Because as anything, the home building industry, just like any other business, is a competitive industry. So when the people have a competitive edge on somebody else, that becomes a reason to sort of jump on the bandwagon, so to speak. And so I'm sure that's certainly something that our client will entertain, but I can't commit to that this evening. But certainly we'll take it back to them and discuss it further with staff, and I'm sure we'll have an answer for you before this comes back to council for a decision. there's a lot there discussed, so I'm not sure if I covered everything there, but I'd be happy to, if there's a specific question there, I'm happy to answer.
Okay, thanks, Pierre. Councillor Fisher.
Through the mayor, just a comment. I know there's a lot of talk about parkland tonight, and I think my perception of parkland is a big area where people can go out. I don't even necessarily need that. I would think open space is more, instead of driving down the street and it's house after house.
Okay, thank you. And just a reminder, I mean, Route 77 was mentioned, and I think we need a reminder to everyone that to realize that Route 77 operates solely at the expense of Wilmot Township. It's not a regional project. It's a township project at this point in time. So just a friendly reminder on that as people are looking to expand it. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Stephanie. Appreciate your comments. Thanks. Our next delegation is Caitlin Lease. Welcome, Caitlin.
Hi there. Thank you. This is my first time doing this, so I'm excited.
Okay, so you have 5 minutes. So.
Okay. Stephanie's presentation serves as an important reminder to the community of Council's commitment to climate action earlier this year. An important step towards creating a sustainable place to live and work in Wilmot Township is to consider the well-being of this community and the projected growth and demographics of its populace. This valuable land butts against the urban area boundary and represents what little space we have left to spread outwards with new residential development, so we must ensure that it is used wisely. Too often treated as separate issues in housing, sustainability, affordability, and supply go hand in hand. What unites them is the types of dwellings that are built. Depending on construction and a few other variables, the structure of small to large building multifamily houses are more energy efficient than single family detached or semi-detached ones. The amount of energy saved through walkable higher density housing and the insulation inherent in the sharing of walls when compared to detached homes is significant. Combined with the commitments to net zero ready housing, development in Wilmot Township should prioritize building townhouses, row houses, and multiplexes. These multifamily dwellings are referred to as the missing middle of housing and are so called because they bridge the gap between increasingly expensive detached homes and cheaper high-density apartment buildings or condos. Unfortunately, this missing middle is in short supply here in Wilmot Township. Townhouses are the most familiar of these residential dwelling types, but we are presented with a unique opportunity to build streets, roads, and infrastructure that encourage sustainable lifestyles and support mixed-use commercial and residential buildings with common green spaces. Creative urban designs like courtyard townhouses have been employed elsewhere across North America and beyond in response to the housing crisis. The alternatives I'm proposing here today are not radical, according to similar decisions being made in the neighboring regions of Guelph and Oxford, as well as the Township Official Plan, hereafter referred to as the OP. As quoted in the proposed development documentation, the OP states that development applications should support the achievement of complete communities that provide diverse range and mix of housing options to accommodate the needs of all household sizes and incomes. Urban design standards, the OP suggests, should guide development towards quality, compact built form. I strongly believe that the proposed development plan fails to meet these goals. If this development moves forward as outlined in its planning report, it will only meet the bare minimum of the OP's commitment to affordable higher density housing in its future stages of development. This requirement states that only 30% of homes in a new development must be planned in forms other than single detached or semi-detached homes. Data from recently sold detached or semi-detached homes in the township suggests that their average sale price is just shy of $1 million at $978,000. The average percent over asking for this sample size was 17%. To put things into perspective, the total median gross household income in Waterloo Region is just $77,530. The cost associated with the type of development being proposed here today is prohibitive for first-time home buyers and those who have been priced out of the market. Confirmed by the record, anyone in search of this housing type needs to have an annual household income over $190,000. With these prices, Wilmot Township is not accessible to the average income earner in the region. If this community is going to continue to expand, it should reflect the diversity of people and income levels in the region. The only way to achieve this is to prioritize development that is purchasable and remains affordable through energy efficiency. In contrast, the sale price of townhouses in Wilmot Township sits somewhere around $650,000 at 30% over asking. Selling above the asking price indicates high demand and low supply, meaning townhouses and other missing middle housing types are what people want and need to see their dreams of living in this community realized, me included. This plot of land is a unique opportunity to be proactive rather than retroactive, reserving any vacant land development for sustainable, affordable housing rather than leaving it as a burden on homeowners or developers to retrofit or infill existing properties will help Wilmot Township achieve its goals set out in the OP and the Transform Waterloo Region strategy. When it comes to addressing the climate and housing crisis facing my generation and generations to come, we simply cannot afford to do the bare minimum.
Thank you, Caitlin. Councillor Fanning.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. I just want to say thank you. And I feel very sure that the developer represented by Mr. Chauvin is listening. And I hope that, I mean, you raise excellent points and absolutely agree. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. See no further questions. So thank you, Caitlin. Our next delegation is Natasha Salonen. Welcome, Natasha.
Hello.
Go ahead. You have your 5 minutes.
Great. Thank you very much, Your Worship and councillors, for letting me speak today. I've had the opportunity to speak to you guys already once this year on development, and it's so great to see so many other people in our community come and speak out about this. It has slightly altered what I'm going to say because I don't want to repeat, but I do want to say a quick thank you to Caitlin as another young person in the community who wants to buy a house in here. The affordability point, I really appreciate you talking about that. So I won't really cover that too much in mine. I do want to chat a bit about how the current proposed development, one of the things that they concluded in their proposal is that this proposed subdivision is currently not premature and it's in the public interest. Although from a housing and intensification point of view, I totally understand where they're coming from. And I do agree, especially with the lack of supply versus the demand for housing. However, and some of these points were touched on by Stephanie, actually, we don't have the infrastructure to be bringing in new people and setting them up for success in our community. So I know that healthcare was touched on, and it was kind of blown over a little bit as doctors haven't actually pursued setting up in Baden for various reasons. However, the statistics are a bit off from what you guys heard. So at any given moment in time in Wilmot Township, we have 6,000 people that are currently not rostered with a healthcare, just regular family doctor. And these people are currently sitting on the Healthcare Connect waitlist, which is over 8 years. And in all of Wilmot is currently serviced by 4 doctors out of the 1 facility in New Hamburg. And it's a 3-year wait list when I spoke to them, except for it's not prioritized on you're the first one on the wait list. It's prioritized if you actually have a family member who's already currently served by those doctors. So we have a huge need for healthcare, as well as the boardwalk. You're looking at a 2 to 4 year wait list, depending on which doctor you're trying to get into. And Waterloo Region on a whole, we actually know is very underserved by doctors. Now, I can value and understand that doctors may have inquired in the past, and it's up to their responsibility to have a location. But I agree with Caitlin in that we have a prime opportunity to be innovative as a community and to be encouraging doctors to come here now, opposed to waiting for having the population, because we already have more of the population than needed for a successful practice. On average, a doctor helps 1,500 patients is what a general roster for one family doctor is. Like I said, we already have 6,000 unregistered people, and that's also not including people who are rostered outside of our township. So many people who've moved from the GTA have remained with their doctors in the GTA because they have regular healthcare needs and they don't want to get off of that roster to go to no doctor. So healthcare is a huge thing that we need. And a big thing we should be looking at is, why don't we have doctors coming here? They have nowhere to go in Baden. We've already discussed the lack of commercial space. Almost every commercial space on our main street is being used. In my past presentation to you guys, we discussed the need for having commercial space that's accessible and affordable. So why don't we look at a township as enticing doctors? We can look at Godridge for an example. They have over 18 doctors and they have a smaller population than Wilmot Township, and they've done things including offering housing options for doctors. They have built new medical facilities to entice doctors to come. We need to have that kind of infrastructure, as well as if we're bringing in affordable housing with that. Generally speaking, lower incomes do also come with needs to more social services. And our social services, such as Wilmot Family Resource, are already overused. And it's great that we want to use them and invite these people, and I want to welcome everyone into our community. But if we don't have these structures in place for them, why are we inviting them? We're setting them up for failure. Another thing I really want to touch on before my time is up is no one's touched on it, but Waterloo Regional District School Board has made it very clear that there will need to be a criteria signed that high school students will not be serviced by Waterloo Oxford in this development. It's in the original plan if you go down to the appendices. They will be serviced within the district, but that can be included getting bused out to anywhere from Elmira to Cambridge. And that's a huge problem, and that does not encourage a community or building community, especially if you have your kids going to elementary school and then getting shipped out. That's a huge issue that I think needs to be addressed. And I'm just going to slightly go over, but on a whole, you guys have the power to choose who is a township we're working with and who is developing on our land. When I spoke to the property owner, Laurel Crest Homes, he believed that we lived in the GTA. If they don't even know where Wilmot Township is and they're planning on coming here exploiting our land, I get that they're building property, but that money is never going to be returned into our local economies. You guys get to choose who we work with, and you get to choose the precedents on how exactly they're building, and you get to decide what the guidelines are for what they're building. I get we have bylaws, but why not, like Caitlin said, be innovative and be proactive? Why are we just trying to reach the bare minimum here? Frankly, I think that's appalling if you're just trying to reach the bare minimum. I understand Harold's comments on it's a fine balance, and you know, I'm not a township planner, but on all of the research that I've done and professionals that I've spoken to in regional planning, it can be done. It is being done. And I think Wilmot Township really needs to decide if we're going to step up, be innovative, and if we're going to choose to be a leader in developing. All I have for now. But
Okay, seeing no questions. Thank you, Natasha. That is the last of our registered delegations. Okay. So the resolution of the report is that report DS 2021-027 be received for information. That is moved by Councillor Gordick, seconded by Councillor Fisher. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Great conversation and lots of information to go back to staff and to come up with a fantastic report. So we now have a couple of presentations. The first being non-designated heritage register, Margaret Rowell. Welcome, Marg.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay,
We
that's
just
great.
can't see you.
Oh, I don't know how to do that. Is there anybody who can help me do that?
Okay,
Look and see. Start video, would that help?
there you
there
go.
we are.
Now you got it.
Okay. Great, thanks very much. Could I have the slides share screen, please, and I can go from there? Great, thank you. Good evening, Mayor Armstrong, councillors, township staff, and members of the community. Thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening on behalf of the Heritage Wilmot Advisory Committee. My name is Marg Roll, and I'm pleased to be here this evening to provide an update on the non-designated heritage register for Wilmot Township. Next slide, please. As you will see on the slide, these are the members of the committee. Next slide. First, what is a municipal register? The municipal register is the official list or record of properties that have been identified as being important to the Township of Wilmot from a cultural heritage perspective. The Ontario Heritage Act allows municipalities to include properties of cultural heritage value on the register that have not been designated. These are known as non-designated properties and are recognized as being of cultural heritage value or interest to HW, meaning Heritage Wilmot. The list is updated from time to time by the Heritage Committee and brought forward to Council for approval. Next one, please. This is a quote from the Ontario Heritage Act, also known as the OHA, that municipal heritage committees follow. Next one. The OHA requires every municipality in Ontario to maintain a municipal heritage register of all properties of cultural heritage value or interest. Here are some samples from Kitchener, Waterloo, Oakville, Cobourg, Orangeville, and Oshawa. You will see how the range of the level of detail for these lists differ, where some municipalities simply note the roll number, address, and general description. You will see the level of detail that Heritage Wilmot presents for their list later on in the presentation. Next, please. So why include properties on the non-designated register? Well, it promotes the knowledge and enhances the understanding of Wilmot Township's cultural heritage resources, provides information that is easily accessible for members of the public, as it is included on the HW website and available at the municipal office. Document consulted by municipal decision makers when reviewing development proposals, recognizes properties of cultural heritage value, and helps to demonstrate council's commitment to conserving heritage resources. Next, please. As you see here, the Ontario Heritage Act has specific requirements for municipalities to follow. Next one. Before a property is recommended for addition to the register, there is an evaluation process that HW goes through. First, properties are visited by members of the committee in order to take photos and discuss the possible addition with homeowners. Then a detailed evaluation form is completed for each property and reviewed by HW. The evaluation follows the designation criteria listed in the OHA in order to ensure consistency. Once HW has agreed that the property should be recommended for addition, a letter and information package is sent out to the property owner. Property owners are provided with a requested date to contact Heritage Wilmot and staff liaison if there are any concerns with their property being added. Finally, the recommended additions are brought forward to council for consideration, which is why I'm here tonight. Next, please. The Heritage Wilmot Advisory Committee is pleased to present to council for consideration 17 new properties to be added to the register. Next, please. As you will see, the addition of the 17 properties reflect schools of Wilmot. The current register, previously approved, already included a few schools, and this list will now complete the remainder. The schools range from 19th century schoolhouses to mid-century modern buildings to 1970s buildings. Next, please. The 19th century schools. The first 7 schools are from the 19th century. They include Cressman School, Hostetler School, New Prussia School, Pine Hill School. Next one, please. Next. Okay. And then there's Horns or Bertlett's Corner School, St. James School, and Hayesville School. I don't think we have the right. Okay, there we go. Now, next one, early 20th century schools. The next 4 schools represent the early 20th century. They include Schmidt School, the former Wilmot Center, Wilmot Senior, Petersburg School, and New Dundee Public School. Next one. The mid-century modern. The last grouping of schools represent mid-century modern and one 1970s school. It includes Waterloo Oxford, Grandview, Holy Family, former St. Agatha, former North Wilmot, and Forest Glen Public School. The next, please. These are proposed deletions. Along with the proposed 17 additions to the register, Heritage Wilmot is also recommending that 2 properties be removed to keep the list accurate and up to date. And that would be Steinman Furniture, which has been demolished, and St. James Evangelical Lutheran Church, which has moved from the non-designated list to designated. And the next one. And this is future steps for Heritage Wilmot. If approved this evening, this would mean that there are 111 properties of cultural heritage value now included on the non-designated list for Wilmot Township. This list is quite impressive for a municipality our size. The committee continues to add properties and will be returning in 2022 with additions to our list. And the last slide. On behalf of Heritage Wilmot, I would like to thank Wilmot Council and staff for the support over the years with heritage conservation in this beautiful township, and for the opportunity to provide this update for consideration this evening. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marg. Ms. Locke, did you wish to comment?
Thank you, Mayor Armstrong. I can highlight, I've got a report that I'd be happy to highlight that dovetails nicely with Marg's presentation. That's okay. Okay. All right. To follow up on Marg's presentation, as you saw from her, the Heritage Wilmot Advisory Committee, they update annually, and the register that Ms. Rowe presented to you this evening is something that the committee has assessed and is looking for endorsement from council's approval. To highlight the report, The Ontario Heritage Act, as Marg mentioned, requires that every municipality in Ontario maintains a publicly accessible municipal heritage register for all properties of cultural heritage value. Where ours is kept, you would notice our last slide, it's on the Heritage Wilmot's website at www.heritagewilmot.ca. As part of the committee's terms of reference, Heritage Wilmot leads the process of recommending updates to the Heritage Register for Council's consideration and approval. The committee uses a specific checklist for evaluating the properties that are based on the criteria within the provincial regulation, as well as the official plan. Being listed on a non-designated property does not imply a designation under the Ontario Heritage Act, nor does it change any legal documents on title for the property, trigger maintenance requirements, restrict renovations to a building, or place any other restrictions. The only restriction for a non-designated property would be with respect to a demolition, which 60 days notice would be required. A municipality is not required to consult with property owners before including the property on the municipal register. However, for decades, Heritage Wilmot has always informed property owners to support transparency, education, and open communication between the committee and the property owner. As noted in the presentation as well as the report, the committee has endorsed a total of 17 properties to be added to the register, which are identified and highlighted in yellow for easy reference. Property owners to all the new additions were notified by letter dated April 22nd of 2021 to inform them that their property has been recognized as historic interest. Pamphlet also accompanied the letter, which provided further information to the non-designated register. And owners were also notified that the updated list would be brought forward as a recommendation to council, and were invited to contact the chairperson of Heritage Wilmot, who is Nick Bogart, or myself as the staff liaison. And any questions or concerns were to be submitted by May 21st. 3 things about the report or presentation, I would be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Ms. Locke. Councillor Fisher.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong. I don't have a question. I'm just going to make a comment. I know each school has played an important part of history in our township, and I'm really glad to see them added. That's very important. I think it is also important to acknowledge and protect heritage properties. They too are our history, and when they're gone, quite often they're forgotten. I know over the last couple of years, we've had several important heritage structures, such as the Hall and Mills Bridge, Sir Adam Beck Home, Steinman Furniture, which I'm sure everybody's going to remember as the old Baden Emporium, and the Huntsberger Home on Snyder's Road East, all come to mind. As Wilmot Township grows, it's important to keep heritage in mind. This committee, which I'm proud to be part of, is such a valuable asset to our community. And I'd really like to thank Tracy, Marg, Yvonne, Nick, and the rest of the committee for all the hard work put into these documents for the township. And in closing, the one sentence that really stands out for me is, while these properties are not officially designated, they are considered of historic importance and value to the Township of Wilmot, much the same as designated properties.
Thank you, Councillor Fisher. Councillor Hallman.
Thank you for the mayor. Remember to lower my hand this time before I started talking. I'm just going to draw attention to page 59. And I'm going to make note to the first asterisk where I think it is number 14. I'm just looking for more clarification on why that school was removed.
Ms. Locke.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong. This one is it's a request to be removed from the list. The property owner within the report, you will notice the comments from the property had requested to not be included. So this is the one that would be, sorry, just let me get my notes here. The former Wilmot Senior Public School you're referring to. Correct. Yeah. So the committee is recommending that it still be included as part of the list. I was just simply noting that it was that the property owner had requested that it be removed, but we are still, the committee is recommending that it still goes ahead with all 17.
Thank you for clarifying that. And
No
then,
problem.
Mayor, I have one more question.
Go ahead.
The second asterisk is the demolition of the Beckdale farm. I'm just looking for clarification on what the township's role is in just preserving those pieces of history that are there. Does the township have access to going there for photos and for collecting any pieces?
Ms. Locke, you go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Armstrong. The Director of Development Services has been working with the property owner to set up a time where some members of Heritage Wilmot can go into the property and photograph inside and outside to document it before demolition.
That's great. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. We had one delegation who didn't show up, so.
Yes, through you, Mayor Armstrong. Delegation, Mr. Rocha, he did register. We did advise him of the time of the meeting. We did send him a link. However, unfortunately, he has not shown up this evening.
Thank you. So there is a recommendation here, and it's lengthy and including all 17 schools and the 2 removals. So accept a mover and a seconder. Councillor Fenning, Councillor Fisher. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Next item is the procurement bylaw update. Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mayor Armstrong. This report and the attached bylaw represent the 5-year review and update to the township's procurement bylaw. As part of the council endorsed work program, staff undertook a comprehensive review of our existing bylaw. The focus of the review was to ensure we're aligned with modern procurement practices while maintaining our guiding principles of fairness and transparency, and obviously the requisite amount of council oversight in the processes. This report outlines some of the key updates, which I'll go through briefly prior to taking any questions from council. So first and foremost, the thresholds within the bylaw have been updated in an effort to match inflationary increases to contracts and construction costs witnessed over the past several years. It's important to note that these updates are intended to streamline the procurement process and only apply to items where council has previously provided budgetary approval. Moving forward with the approval of this bylaw, should it be approved, council approval would be required for budget approved projects where the cost exceeds $100,000. The goal, I want to be clear, is not to shift any decision-making authority away from council for all projects under the $100,000 amount, but within the capital program, council will be made aware of the successful vendors as part of our regular quarterly capital updates, or through visiting our public website, bids.wilmot.ca, where results of all of our public bids are posted. Staff have reviewed the thresholds across all area municipalities and witnessed most, if not all, at this $100,000 threshold or above. Another update is with regard to the need for public posting for items between $20,000 and $50,000. Under the updated bylaw, this may be waived if deemed beneficial to the municipality. This would allow staff to solicit 3 competitive quotations from local vendors and or vendors with a positive working history with the township and negate the need to post publicly, getting upwards to 20 bid submissions from all over the province. To that extent, vendor evaluation program also has been formalized through this bylaw, requiring that all projects exceeding $250,000 undergo a formal vendor evaluation with records maintained in a centralized location for future review. Language has also been included to reiterate our corporate focus on environmental protections and sustainability. The majority of remaining changes were minor in nature and focused on wording, titles, and the overall organization and flow of the bylaw. Corporate leadership team has reviewed the proposed changes and are in full support of this movement to a more efficient and effective purchasing process for the township that maintains fairness, transparency, and council oversight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Any comments or questions? Councillor Fanning.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Armstrong. First, I want to say thank you to the corporate leadership team and particularly finances for your work on this. I believe it's successful in enabling responsive decision-making while maintaining transparency. I'm especially pleased with the inclusion of language that articulates our commitment to environmental sustainability. And I reached out to the director today to just ask for a little bit of some strengthening on that, and want to say thank you again for responding to that. And I'm going to request that we make that change so that section 2D, I believe it is, would read: the purchase of goods and services with a proactive approach to climate change and the preservation of the natural environment, and to encourage the use of environmentally sensitive products and services. All purchases will include due consideration of the long-term environmental impacts to balance fiscal responsibility with social and environmental values. So I really, again, appreciate the director's response to me on that. I think that if we intend to take action, the first place to enshrine that intention is in our overarching policies, and that's what this does. Procurement is one of the most important areas for expressing that priority.
Okay, thank you.
The director has the wording, so if we need to put it up, if anyone has questions about it, otherwise I can email it.
Mr. Kelly, did you want to put it up, or?
Yeah, I could put it up on. I could put it up on the screen. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure. Sorry.
Yep, no problem.
Is that visible now? Should be. Yep. So I made, through you, Mayor Armstrong, to the clerk, Ms. Middleholtz. Is that considered just a friendly amendment to the bylaw, or how would we do that?
Thank you, through you, Mayor Armstrong. So with what we're doing right now, it would be an amendment to the recommendation. So at this, yeah, it's an amendment to the recommendation, because it's the second part that an updated that the updated bylaw as amended be adopted. And then when we get to section 18.1, again, sorry, that's the confirmatory bylaw. 14.1, then we're looking at a bylaw as amended as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so everybody's seen that, and it's good. So Councillor Hallman.
Thank you, through the mayor, to the Director of Corporate Services. Just question from the public. Can you just summarize again your outreach to other surrounding municipalities, that this is very much in line with other municipalities? And can you maybe perhaps touch on on just some of them, or how that process works for your department to collaborate with them?
Sure, that's thank you, Councillor Hallman, through you, Mayor Armstrong. Yeah, so through our participation, both my participation with area treasurers for all the local municipalities and our participation on the Grand River Co-op purchasing group, we do share information regarding our purchasing policies, guidelines, and also experience with vendors. I did outreach to all the municipalities. From that outreach, I can confirm that all of the obviously the larger cities are all in excess of the $500,000 threshold as their cutoff, and over $1 million for some of them. As far as the local municipalities or the townships go, the Township of North Dumfries just recently updated their purchasing guideline with a threshold of 100,000 for council approval. Wellesley still is maintained at a lower level at this point in time. Woolwich is currently at $75,000 and undertaking a review of their bylaw, including those thresholds, subject to timing with COVID impacts. They haven't got around to it yet, but I can confirm that everybody kind of is consistently at the same step, reviewing and updating their bylaws, and these thresholds are normal throughout the region. The key point with that, though, is that these are items that council has previously approved within budget. If it's going over budget, it doesn't matter that the $100,000 threshold doesn't kick in. If it's something that's going to be in excess of budget or an unbudgeted item, council will always be made aware of those and have the authority over that decision making.
Okay. Councillor Gordick.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. So I've spoken to Ms. Jackson. So originally I was thinking that I wanted our incoming CAO to take a look at this, but through the conversations that we've had and with Mr. Kelly as well as Ms. Jackson, I'm comfortable because this is a living document, so it can always be changed if our incoming CAO is not agreeing to it. However, I did have a question, because when I first came on council, one of the questions I had was why we don't use local when it comes to supplies. And the comment came back was due to competition, which I totally understand, because you don't want to leave yourself short if you're not having anybody from someplace else apply and tender for a potential job here or work here. So taking that thought process, you had mentioned that there's some discretion with the up to 50,000 and that you would source local. So I'm wondering how that would work, and maybe 50,000 isn't a lot of money, but it could be. What does that do with our sort of, it seems to me it's counterintuitive to the buying local, where we were told we don't do that because we don't want to cut off. So could you speak to that, Mr. Kelly?
Yeah, that's a great question, Councillor Gordick, through you, Mayor Armstrong. What I tried to mention there is sometimes we have experience with local vendors, not simply local vendors, but also vendors that have been very successful on projects, have a great history with the municipality of performing well. For projects between $20,000 and $50,000, we've been able to solicit 3 quotations still to verify the pricing is in line. Some of those quotations will be from local vendors. Some will also be from historical vendors. It's more the point of it avoids, I guess, a larger procurement process. Well, sometimes we're seeing up to 20 proposals submitted from Quebec, from all over Canada, a large review process. So this streamlines that a little bit, but still maintains the integrity of the process, that we're getting 3 competitive quotations, and we know they're from successful vendors that the municipality's used in the past.
Go ahead, Councillor Gordy.
Thank you. Again, through you, Mayor. So one other thing is that you had mentioned that it would be part of the work plan. Is there a possible way, and I'd already spoken to Ms. Jackson about this, but I'm just bringing it forward to see how staff felt about it, when we have a successful bid, and as we won't be getting, or this bylaw sort of negates having a staff report. I think sometimes waiting until, depending on when the actual bids are approved, a work plan is quarterly. And so we might be months not finding out what happened, and there could be a resident. Is there any way that there could be a reporting mechanism of some kind, even if it's an internal email, to let us know that a bid has gone out and the successful one, so that we are aware of something coming up if we are questioned about who's doing what work where, and somebody says, I saw a truck, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I think we obviously have no issues with communicating that to council. I think just in hearing you ask that now, I thought to myself, similar to the check listing that we provide to council on a monthly basis, so you know where money's being spent. We could probably do a similar approach, just a brief email summary to council of approved projects that didn't hit the council agenda package, so you're on board or understand what's out there in case residents reach out. That's not a problem whatsoever.
And just to follow up, is that a bunny in the background?
You know what? I got it. Yes, it's a bunny in the background on the steps, and people thought I was turning my chair because I was nervous. I was trying to get the bunny to stay away from coming downstairs, but thanks for noticing.
Unfortunately, we didn't realize you'd gone down the rabbit hole today, sir. Miss Jackson, if you can speak.
Thank you, Mayor. There was a cat jumping behind Councillor Gordick earlier too, just for the record. It's a very pet-friendly environment this evening. I just wanted to also mention, maybe Patrick can elaborate, but I believe that the results of all the tender information is on the township website, and the members of the public can look there as well as members of council.
Yeah, I did touch on that briefly in my opening, just bids.wilmot.ca. Every public bid that we put out is posted on there, and the results of that bid, our supervisor of procurement, Marzina, does a great job of getting those bid results posted as soon as they're ready to go public. So we can also direct the public there if they're looking for successful vendors.
Okay, thank you. Well, some people put in a chair rail and others put in a cat rail, so that's kind of cool. Anyway, we have a recommendation. And that recommendation, that report COR 2021-032 regarding the update to the township bylaw for the procurement of goods and services and disposal of surplus goods be received for information purposes, and further that an updated bylaw be adopted as amended with an effective date of October 1st, 2022. Is that supposed to be 2022? Cool.
That should be 2021. Sorry to say 2022.
There we go. And the date is now amended. Moved by Councillor Gerber, Councillor Hallman. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Next, we have correspondence, and the recommendation that correspondence item number 13.1 be received for information. And that is moved by Councillor Fisher, Councillor Hallman. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And bylaws, recommendation that bylaw number 2021-43 be introduced, read a first, second, third time, and finally passed in open council as amended. Moved by Councillor Fenning, Councillor Gerber. All in favor? That is carried. Is there any notice of motions? Seeing none. Announcements. Councillor Fenning.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. I want to highlight that Castle Kilbride has launched a program called Vintage Views of Wilmot. And it's a really fun, interactive way to see the way things we live with all day, every day now looked a long time ago. and you can go to the website and get the links for that. This event is about removing barriers to participation and enabling the public to explore arts and culture activities in their own community and beyond. We know with COVID, that's a really important thing. This is a really great COVID-friendly activity. So Castle Kilbride staff have created a new interactive self-guided history experience featuring key locations in Wilmot Township for participants to explore using QR codes. If you have ever wondered what Wilmot Township looked like in the past, this tour will interest you. Since this is a first-time initiative, Baden, New Dundee, and New Hamburg are being featured this year, and hopefully in the future we'll be able to include the rest of the communities in Wilmot. By visiting the museum's website or Facebook page, vintage views, instructions, and PDF of each town can be accessed. By standing in each identified location, enjoy the view as it is today. Using your smart device, scan the QR code and view the vintage photo taken from that exact location. In addition, when the code is scanned, the history of the structure, park, or location is included to enhance the experience. Printed copies are available at Castle Kilbride for those who wish to enjoy the tour without using a device. And staff invite participants to share their images on Castle Kilbride or the Township of Wilmot social media, or just enjoy it. I also want to highlight, and thank you to the mayor for highlighting some of the events happening for September 30th. The Healing of the Seven Generations at 300 Frederick Street is holding a walk. There has been a sacred fire burning in memory of the children and as part of the cultural observances when there is death for the children who didn't come home. And beginning at 300 Frederick Street, there will be a walk from there to Victoria Park to the clock tower on September 30th. And everyone is invited and encouraged to participate, wear orange, come out and show your respect and acknowledgement of the loss of these dear children's lives. There will also be candlelight vigil at 7 p.m. And a sacred fire in the park as well. So I hope I plan to be there, and I hope that a lot of other people can make it as well.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fisher.
Thank you. I'd just like to highlight that last Tuesday, Mayor Armstrong and myself were at Beck Park. Us and 40 other people, I believe, planting 100 trees. And I also like to acknowledge Home Hardware for all the support and help that they had planting. And they also had very kind words for Ms. Jackson and Jeff Dubrick, all the help that the township provided for this project. So they look really good. It was a little wet. Actually, it was a lot wet. Rained pretty regularly, but good turnout, and looks great.
Yeah, the trees certainly didn't need to be watered at that time anyway. Councillor Hallman.
Thank you, through the mayor. I just wanted to touch on Let's Tree Wilmot. It's coming to New Dundee this coming Saturday from 9 till noon. So please visit their website if you're able to contribute and help plant trees in our community. And then in Mannheim on October 16th from the same time, 9 till noon, visit there to get all the COVID protocols and how you can contribute to adding to our tree canopy in Wilmot Township. I also wanted to thank township staff and you can please correct me with the proper name of the organization for the CN Railway. It was really amazing to see such quick action happen when sometimes government can move slowly, but to see a tragedy happen in our community and then to see such quick action to making sure that people with different abilities are accommodated and to make our community safer. It's really great to see those stickers out in front of the railway crossing in New Hamburg, and such a great way to keep people safe with everyone's different abilities. So thank you all for making that happen so quickly.
Thank you, Councillor Hellman. I concur, and I appreciate CN's quick response to that request and them supplying the decals. And if I remember correctly, we had some assistance. Either was it from the region or from City of Kitchener? I guess I'd have to ask Mr. Molyneux, who assisted with the flames.
That was the region of Waterloo that provided us with the piece of equipment for our staff to do some of the installs.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah. Appreciation of the cooperation from the region as well. Ms. Jackson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to circle back to this coming Thursday, the first September 30th, National Recognition Day for Every Child Matters, and let council and the members of the community know that the township has been working really hard with respect to developing an educational opportunity for members of staff, and that Thursday staff will be working a regular day, but will be pausing throughout the day to take an opportunity to learn about the residential schools and the loss that occurred, and to try and improve our level of understanding of what the Indigenous communities have gone through. So I want to thank the staff from our Human Resources Department who helped put together the educational sessions that staff will be able to participate in this Thursday, and let the community know that we're really pleased to be able to start this process towards reconciliation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Councillor Gordick.
Thank you, your Mayor. Through you, first of all, so thank you, Ms. Jackson, for that information. I'm just wondering, is some of the information that we were provided as councillors from the Human Resources Department, I'm wondering if perhaps maybe that might be put up on the website, Township's website. I think some of the residents within the community, because a lot of them were open to the public. I believe there were some comments about some shows on the CBC and things like that. So the links might be beneficial to some of our residents who are trying to find out where things are. And of course, I think some of the events that are happening that we at least know of, that might be helpful to the community in general who don't know where to look. And for information, I think there was reading materials and other things as well, which I think I'd appreciate if that could go up on the website. So yeah, thank you for that.
Yep.
And then finally, sorry, go ahead, Sandy. No,
I was just going to say, I think that Director Kelly had some feedback towards that, but we definitely can support that. Go ahead, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you. And then just finally, just to follow up with Councillor Hallman, she had mentioned too the weekends within her ward, and I do want to mention that on October the 23rd, the Les Tree Wilmot is going to be doing Petersburg Park. So we're kind of hitting all, just that people know within the community, it's kind of hitting all of the townships. So Petersburg Park on October 23rd. Same time period from 9 till 12 if people are able to help, and planting some trees within the community.
Very good. Thank you. That's it for the announcements. And so next item would be the confirmatory bylaw. The recommendation that bylaw number 2021-44 to confirm the proceedings of council at this meeting held on September 27th, 2021 be introduced and ready first, second, and third time, and finally passed in open council. That is moved by Councillor Gordy, Councillor Fenning, all in favor. That is carried. And now everybody's favorite recommendation that we do now adjourn to meet again at the call of the mayor. And that is moved by Councillor Fisher, Councillor Gordick, all in favor. And we're done. Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for tuning in.